everyone, and welcome to ScholarChit Chats, where we dive into the ins and outs of graduate school and every research and everything in between. I'm your co-host today, Chidinma. Today's episode is particularly an insightful one for non-STEM students out there. Non-STEM in the context of science, whose individuals whose field does not fall within science, technology, engineering, and math. And most especially when people think about graduate school, when people think about funding, they usually kind of restrict themselves within that particular area. However, today I have a guest who also doubles as my amazing friend, whose field doesn't really fall into the STEM area. And so she's going to be sharing about her experience and how she got a teaching assistantship role at an R1 institution. For those who don't know what an R1 institution is, an R1 institution is a university that has been classified as having the highest level of research activity by Carnegie Classification of Institutions of Higher Education. So Debbie is going to tell us. I call her Debbie for short, so don't be bothered about where Debbie, how we migrated from Deborah to Debbie. So Debbie is going to be sharing her experience. I'm joined by Deborah, a master's student who successfully succeeded teaching assistantship in a field that traditionally doesn't see a lot of funding. So Debbie, thank you for joining us today and for being open to sharing your experience. Now, before we go into the questions, I know most of our listeners are super excited. I'm going to start with just asking you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what you do. I know I said that you are in a non-STEM field. What is that field actually? And then we can go ahead with the questions.
Okay, thank you so very much for having me, Chidinma. I'm very happy to be here. Hello, everyone. Like she already said, my name is Deborah. You can say Deborah, you can say Debbie. It's okay. I am a master's student at the University of Florida. I just began my second year. What am I studying? What's my non-STEM? My non-STEM is French. Yes, I am studying French language in the University of Florida, and I'm specifically on the linguistics pathway. So you could do French literature or French linguistics. I am doing French linguistics here in the University of Florida. Aside from being a French person, a Nigerian French person, so to say, I am a child of God. I'm a happy person. I love to sing, I love to dance, and I love to just make merry, be happy.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And everyone who knows Debbie knows that she likes to be happy. That's, as you can get the vibe from her voice. So thank you so much, Deborah. I think maybe I'll just start with the very first question, right? Like, as a typical Nigerian, I had my experience with French, and it was not good, to say the least, right? I remember back in secondary school when we'll be asked to write French essays. I'd literally cram the French essay that our teacher taught us in class and just pour exactly the same thing back. So a particular experience that comes to mind is when we were asked to write an essay on ma maison. I think ma maison means my home or something like that. I kind of copied the ma maison essay that our teacher. So if our teacher said ma maison, my house is a black whatever, I wrote literally the same thing because that's all I could remember. So why did you get into French? Right, maybe it's the Nigerian or the African in me that's like, what's your business with French, Debbie?
I've gotten that question quite a number of times. Why French? Why not any other thing? I would start by saying that my love for French started from when I was in primary school. I had a French teacher who was very, very interesting. He's Cameroonian and he had just come into Nigeria from Cameroon then. So when he was teaching us, he was open to the point of saying that we should do like a language exchange. Although we were barely 9-10 years old as at then, but he would say we should teach him English while he taught us French. So it was really interesting. He wasn't the typical Nigerian wicked. I don't know. There's just this narrative about French teacher in Nigeria. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
so he wasn't that one. He wasn't that one. So I liked French then, but then I did well in French, just the way I did well in my other subjects. So there was no special, interest in, but French was a subject that I liked. And I proceeded to secondary school. I attended a public secondary school in Lagos where, we had French teachers also, and the love continued. My French teachers were very, very nice, very accommodating and friendly. I kept on doing well. I would say that I did well generally in all my subjects. Right, I did well in French as much as I did in other subjects also. So there was still no special interest. Then I got to senior secondary school. In senior secondary school, I was told that I would probably not take French anymore. It was only mandatory up until junior secondary school. So that's when I discovered that, I didn't want to stop doing French. So it was one of the reasons I decided to go to art class so that I can keep doing French. I just kept on with it, and when it was time to decide a course to study in the university, one thing about me then was I like to be different. I just, when I see many people going a particular route, I just want to pull back and say, okay, do I have to take this route too? So I knew the normal thing for an art student to, I mean, the general, especially if you're a brilliant art student, you want to do law or mass comm, So I was like, do I have to do law or mass comm? And then I don't know where the inspiration came from. I was just like, okay, I think I want to do French. I actually chose to do French by myself, to study French uni. So I just said, okay, it's French I want to do. I don't want to do law. There was nothing stopping me from doing any other thing if I wanted to. But I just decided that I want to do something different, and I know that I just thought that I could still make something great out of my life with French. I didn't have any concrete example, but I just did. I just chose it, and today I have no regrets. I really thank God.
Wow, that's a very interesting story, and as you rightly pointed out, like once you're like in a particular field, so for science, it's like when you're done, all right, so you have to go and study that medicine, engineering, and then for, STEM, for like those in an art field, it's like, as you said, mass comm or law, like law was like the top thing. So I'm going to study law. So it's very interesting to hear your story. And I think one of the things also that I find interesting is how much the impact a teacher makes, right, in a student's life. Like if you had the very mean French teachers, for instance, I don't know if you would have gone down this route. So I'm going to talk a little bit about teaching more later. Exactly, because I know that's something you're also very passionate about. But let's talk about your experience now, like with the funding and everything. So now you've talked about like, how you got into French and how you studied French for your undergraduate studies. So a lot of students might feel very discouraged, especially when they did not do anything STEM, or maybe their focus is something on art related, right? Was there any specific thing that made you feel like there was an opportunity for you in this area? Like I've had people like, oh, I didn't study any science, thing, like what's I don't think there'll be funding opportunities. Like what made you feel like there was something that was an opportunity for you? I think if I have two questions in one. So what made you think so? And then two is, how did you go about finding this, right? So it's one thing to like, oh, I feel like there's something available for me. It's another thing about finding. So what are the practical steps that, someone can learn from? How did you find about this opportunity you are and right now? And yeah, what made you feel like there was an opportunity for you?
Very much for that question. I would say that right from like when I finished secondary school, for example, I have, your mindset really matters. It starts from like the position of your mind. So I had always had that belief that I can make something great out of this course that I've chosen to study. I know many people actually talked down on me. I won't even lie. Like people were like, French, why? Even my family, but then family, they will always support your decision regardless. But then they just believe God with me that okay, go ahead, right? But I saw that when it comes to languages, the fact that I know that language, for example, goes beyond the borders of Nigeria. French is spoken in many places outside this continent. French is practically spoken in every continent, although at different rates, different levels, but French is spoken in all the continents in the world. So I just believe that although as I had not gone out of, in short, I had not even left Nigeria, let alone the African continent. But I just saw myself as a global person, because I saw that if I go to France, I would be able to survive and speak and interact with people. So I just saw that I have a superpower in a way in that regard. Yeah, so I saw that I have something global, something that the world can reckon with. I can speak this language, and especially the way I learned it again. I learned French to native-like proficiency without living in a francophone environment, without not even passing a night in a French-speaking country, all in Nigeria. Till now, people still hear it and I'm shocked. Like, what? How? Many people even used to think I'm Senegal or Cameroon. They think I'm Franco, but then I say,
you do look like someone from Togo.
Well, I think I do because I speak French. So they say, oh, you speak French. That means you're from Cameroon. No, I'm not from Cameroon, I'm from Nigeria. And they're like, Nigeria? So there was that. So I just knew that I have opportunities. I love to teach. I know many people usually like to talk about embassy, things like that. But the truth is, if I'll be there, maybe just to pass time or like for a while, but I see myself in the teaching profession because I have a vision, I have a goal in this regard. Just like you said about teaching, I see that there is this apathy by Nigerians, for example, when it comes to learning other languages, learning French, for example, and there's this narrative about French teachers being mean, So I see that there is something fundamentally wrong that needs to be corrected in how teachers, language teachers especially, approach teaching of French to learners. So it's one of like my research interest, right? So that's why I'm in second language acquisition as my area of interest currently. So talking about how I got into this opportunity, it was first of all the fact that I was resolute after having my first degree in the University of Ibadan, arguably the best university in Nigeria. Arguably, guys, you can always argue it. So I just thought to myself that for my master's it has to be outside of the country, because I already attended UI, so what else is there to attend? So I knew that I wanted to take my master's in outside of the country. So I started to gather information, very important. And one thing I believe is important again is I believe it's important to be sure of which country outside of the country, outside of Nigeria, can mean many other countries, many other continents. So yes, which country, very important, because it was one of the mistakes I made, because I tried a year before the year I finally got the admission, but then I wasn't really specific about where I was up. I applied to Europe, I think the US too, I don't know, about 3 continents like that. It was just a lot. But the following year I was more specific about, okay, of the country, where exactly would you like to study? Haven't decided on that. And then the next thing now to look for what is your what do you want to do? What is your research interest? So you shouldn't say that because you're not in STEM, you are not advantaged. No. The truth actually is that because many people, are in STEM, and STEM is like a big deal. So many people now overlook non-STEM. However, it now makes non-STEM not as competitive as STEM. That's actually the truth. If you will see the opportunity. So non-STEM, STEM courses now are very, very, extremely competitive. Now, this is not to say that not, but then when everybody just focuses on STEM, you now assume that this university only focuses on STEM. That's not true. Every university wants to be well-rounded in all available courses, so that I feel like it's part of the things that make a university rank very high too. So not just STEM, but even in other fields, other areas in academia, they are also up there. So if you're not in STEM, you are not disadvantaged at all. Just make sure that you put yourself together, have a solution, even if the solution is not yet in your hands, but have a problem, a very tangible problem in field that you are very passionate about solving, right? And position yourself very well, position your work, the things you are currently doing to support that, right? To buttress the solution you're trying to solve, that you're preparing yourself for, and by God's grace you will be fine. So that was what I did actually. So when I discovered my research interest, which definitely is in language learning generally, that goes beyond French actually, but then with French as my number one language, as a target language, since that's the language I studied. So I chose that, and then I began to look for universities that have provision for what I'm trying to do, because that's also very important, so that it's not as though you want to do A, your university is doing C, there's already a clash of interest. And then it goes on and on. I don't want to talk too much. I think I should stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Like every time you talk, there's a lot of richness. I think I like what you said about, starting with one's mindset, because there's nothing wrong with starting like you're feeling disadvantaged already. Oh my God, I studied French. What on earth am I going to? And I like how you said it as a superpower. That's very interesting, and it's evidence in not just, I know you personally, right? So it's evidence even in the passion that, you put into your work, and that's something that is very fascinating. And then I like the intentionality, right? Because I've had a couple of people where like, oh, how'd you get this scholarship? Oh, hey, can you write my essay for me? Oh, hey, can you do this? I'm like, no, like no one can do these things for you. The best person that wants this is you, right? Even if someone is helping you, they won't do it as you would. The intentionality would not be there. So that's very, very fantastic. So I think I'll ask now about your application, right? So you said you searched, I'm guessing maybe you can throw a little bit more light into how you searched while you're answering the question. Did you just go on Google? Because people are like, oh, where are these opportunities? In the US, for instance, you are studying at the University of Florida. It's such a very big country. Like, where do I start from, right, in terms of searching? So did you just go on Google and search French courses in this? And then when you found a particular place, right, how did you approach your application process? Especially because, like, my knowledge of the US, there seems to be a lot more funding for PhD and PhD and postdoc students compared to like masters, right? So seeing someone who got funding at the master's level is such a big deal, right? So how did you go about, number one? So how did you actually search now, right? You've told us about the determination. What did you search for? And then secondly, how did your application process go, especially with respect to funding? How did you assess that funding?
So for the search, yes, just going on Google is not a bad idea at all, right? So I did do that. I did do going on Google, typing keywords like universities in the US that have MA in French linguistics. I was very particular about French linguistics because generally in French department they tend to have more French literature and not French linguistics. So that was something I was trying to like look out for very specifically. So going on Google is not a bad idea. However, how I actually learned about the University of Florida and the course I'm currently doing was actually through a friend, right? So the people you surround yourself with, also the right people that you voice your interest to. So I learned about this department, the department I'm in now, through a friend of mine that I met during NYC. The plan then was after NYC, I'm starting my master's. So I used to mention it with him. So it was him who told me, oh, he has a friend who knows a friend in UF, and the friend is actually doing French, and that he thinks that I should check the school out. So that was how I learned about UFS. So I looked the school up, saw that they had French linguistics. I even discovered that there's someone there that I even know from the University of Ibadan. I didn't know all of that before until I started making my findings when my friend told me about the University of Florida. So I made my findings, like I said, and saw that they practically tick the box for everything that I've been looking for and would like to do. And definitely I checked for funding also and saw that they have graduate assistantship. And another thing about my own department is the fact that they do not have a PhD track. So yes, some universities and courses like that do not have PhD. So although I understand how you said that for departments that have PhD and then they admit people for masters, it can be a little dicey. But my department did not have PhD at all, so I can't really say much about that aspect. Yes. So having seen that from their requirements, I reached out to the graduate coordinator. We exchanged mails like countless times. Yes, and she was very receptive. She was very welcoming. So we exchanged mails. I asked every question that I just deemed fit that I thought was pertinent, like the graduate assistantship, how long was it, and all of that. And she answered me. Yeah, and then the documents also, definitely the application documents are required. I asked questions. Take for instance, writing sample is masters, but writing sample is still very, very necessary, and it was required by my department. So I needed to have that ready also. I used my undergraduate project though, like my project work from undergrad was what I used, and there were some other documents that they required of me that I know I needed to make sure that I have. They did not require GRE for me. I don't know if I can say that for the entire UF, but my department did not require English language proficiency either. Although I had written then, and I presented it nonetheless. I wrote IELTS and I presented, but they didn't ask. I think they said because I schooled in Nigeria that there wasn't need for that.
Yeah.
So, yes, I think that's basically the main part. But I wrote. It's very important to take active, even if somebody will be helping you vet or something. It's very important to be actively involved in writing your SOP, in writing your CV, because take for instance for my admission now, I was interviewed a month into my application, right? So, and I'm sure that they want to hear that correlation between the things I had written down and the things I had to say. So if I wasn't really involved in the things I wrote, it would be difficult for me to communicate it. So that's also a very important thing to note.
Thank you very much, Debbie. I think that's very fantastic. So I think one of the things the key things I heard you say is, first of all, searching, right? Searching for opportunities. Google is, because people will say Google is your best friend, right? So searching for opportunities using keywords, and that was also something that I did for myself. I think also I like what you said about networking, right? And people you have within your network. So it could, as long as you have, I know in my experience when I was also applying, I had really around me everyone. In fact, it was an issue not to be applying for something. So I recall then the organization I was working at then, when you're not applying for something, everybody looks at you like you're crazy. In fact, some people just started applications even though they did not want to travel, right? Because it was like, it was the culture. Like, oh, what are you applying for? I'm applying for this. What are you applying for? So, and like almost 90% of all of us have actually traveled out, right? So, except those who haven't were those who did not want to, right? So, and even those who did not want to ended up like getting like really greater opportunities. So, the people you surround yourself with is very, very important. The encouragement you get from them and also the information you get from them. So, I really like that. And then the third thing I love that you did, reaching out to people. I think we kind of have this fear, especially I would say I'll use myself as an example. Like I know, for instance, in Nigeria, when you browse organizations and then you look at their websites, you send them an email, nobody will even respond. And it kind of makes you like, who will? But people will when you reach out, like people will, because that's literally like their job. As Debbie said, there's usually an academic coordinator. Like that's the person's job to kind of help interested prospective and current students. So like send an email, reach out. Funny enough, before I started my master's in the UK, I used to call. I used to call actually then, because when I called, I got speaker answers. So I was just like, put the country code and then call the particular place. So I remember one of the ladies that was handling my scholarship. Eventually, when I got my scholarship, she was like, oh, I really wanted to call you, right? Because I know you've been reaching out. I wanted to specifically deliver the news to you, because she already knows that I was putting a lot of effort. So I really loved what you said about that. So, and we'll be choosing towards like the last question. Because what about your CV, we have previous episodes on how to prepare your CV, so everyone can just check that out, and then your SOP. I love what you mentioned because it made it easier for us to transition to the next question I have for you, and that's about your interview process, right? So you were invited for an interview. Like, how did you get yourself ready for this interview, right? I love what you said about putting yourself, like investing yourself in it, because no one can tell your story the better as much as you can, right? So how did you get ready for this interview, and how did the process look like for you?
Okay, thank you for the question. So I got myself ready for the interview first by what I already said earlier. I don't know how to put it. Like, I wouldn't say understanding. Like, okay, maybe I'll just use understanding the things that's sent out, because I know they are going to be working with the things that, because I already made my application then, and I know they don't know. So I want to make sure that all of those things that are sent to represent me, I as the person who has been represented, I have like honed them. So my writing sample, I made sure that, okay, what's my writing sample about, in case that's what they ask me about. My SOP, so I made sure that I understood and I could answer questions on any part of the document I had sent. And then the next thing I did was I read about the department, like, the department, because in my SOP I mentioned the department, mentioned a few professors also. So I did that again. I read up about the department, just their website, their professors, and I focused more on the professors that had similar interests with mine. Because I wanted to let them just know that as much as I have this interest, I also know that your department is able to provide to me what I want. Yeah, so I needed to like tell them that, so they don't, just assure them that the department has what I need, that kind of thing. Yes. So I read up the department, read up professors, and another thing that I did was, because I know that they have teaching assistantship position. Right, I knew that I needed to sell my teaching skills to them, so they know that you can employ me to teach. I would be happy to, right? So I prepared by doing that as well, and I also prepared questions to ask them, because I believe that that would also, because I know it was an interview, but I know I could ask questions. I could ask them questions maybe when they are done asking me questions. So I did that too. I so that they can know that, because I said I read of the department, so I made sure that for my reading of the department, I noted some things that I wanted to ask questions about. For example, in my department, I saw one institute called FFRI, but I didn't quite have all the details about it, even from their website. So when they were done asking me questions, I was like, oh, I saw this that really interested me, but is there this, is there that, is there room for this? So they were so happy to answer. So, so I think it is a good way to let them know that, oh, I'm ready. I know this place at least to some extent. And, yes, I think those were the major things that I did. And definitely I prepared by praying. So please.
Yeah, yeah, that's really fantastic, Debbie. And I love what you said, preparation, 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 right? You can never, and I like what you said about like, because some people like just literally wake up and then attend interviews. And then I know from in my own experience, one of the first questions I wasn't prepared. So I already prepared, like, oh, they're going to ask me, tell us a little bit about yourself, from there. And then they started in reverse. And I was kind of thrown off a little bit. But if I didn't get myself prepared as you're talking about, it would have been very difficult to like answer any question that you are asked. And
Mm,
people always want to know that you know something about them, right? Like,
mm,
oh, the institution you mentioned about, that's always something that really stands out. So before you go do your research, if you're going to be working with a professor, like you can read up their latest article and then you can like, oh, I read this paper. Or I found that I have this suggestion. I think this is the way this paper could have been better, for instance. That kind
mm,
of shows that interest. And I think that's really amazing. So I think, and also what you talked about, preparing by praying, I mean, it's such an amazing, I strongly believe it's such an amazing privilege and a favor, that God can give someone to be able to have this opportunity. So I think the last question I want to ask you now is, you've been talking about how you love teaching, and currently you're a teaching assistant. I know
mm.
people a little bit more converse. I would say I use my own experience. People are conversant with like graduate research assistantship. So what does a teaching assistantship look like, right? And
Mm.
then was that something you told them? Oh, I want to be a teaching assistant. How did you like, or was it offered to you? And for someone who is interested in that too, like, how did you build yourself up to being a teaching assistant? Did you teach when you were in Nigeria? Like, how did that look like for you?
Okay, thank you for the question. So, departments generally in US offer different kinds of assistantships. So, the department already offers teaching assistantships. So that's why part of the things they look out for is the ability of their incoming students to teach. So, like teaching experience is something that they are big on because they have TA available. So that's something else. That's something we also want to like look out for as we're looking at, so if a department is having TA and not specifically RA, like research assistant,
Mm,
you want to make sure that in your CV you let them know that you are able to teach, right?
mm,
So what's in your CV and maybe in your SOP to, just make sure that you are keeping that in as much as you can. You're able to take up a teaching assistant role. So the duty of teaching assistant, it varies per department. In some departments, is like that teaching assistant, like literally you're assisting a professor, a
mm,
more experienced professor in the department. So they'll have very many students and they'll need help with grading, class control, attendance, yeah, and maybe even correspondences with students, like mails. You might, like, the teaching assistant might be in charge of just relating with the students while they do the teaching, like just come to class, show up and teach. And in some other contexts, like in mine, you you will be teaching the course, like you will be the teacher of the
mm,
course in the entire sense of it. The only difference will be that'll make a teaching assistant is the fact that you'll be answerable to a professor. Like that
mm,
professor will not be like your teaching supervisor. So I have I'm the teacher of my course, the course that I'm like course for which I'm supposed to be TAing, but I have a
mm,
supervisor that I'm answerable to. The supervisor provides the syllabus. I do the teaching, I do the grading, I take attendance, and all of
mm,
that. So yes, so it varies, and I don't know if it's possible to know which kind that one would do at the
mm,
point of application, or it's until, but I think it's until you're admitted before you know the
mm,
details of what form the TA is going to take. But whichever one is going to be, it's the fact that you're able to sell your teaching skills is always very good. So now, to prepare for that, I believe that every serious student must have, in one way or the other, taught. So it now depends on how you're now able to, like, express it in your documents. And if you haven't, and if you still have the chance, I believe maybe in tutorials, not everybody, I taught a lot. So I taught in secondary school, I've taught primary schools, I've taught even in uni, taught people in doing all this distance learning and all of that. So I did a lot of teaching that I could use, but I know not everybody did that. But I'm just saying that even if you taught, I don't know, maybe in the church, maybe tutorial classes with your colleagues, maybe so any opportunity you've had like that to just impart knowledge one way or the other, you want to make sure that you are bringing it to the table to show your teaching skills, yes, so that you'll be a more preferred candidate for the role, especially if the scholarship is a T. So you just want to make sure that any teaching role that you've performed in times past, you're bringing it to the core. Yes.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It's been very, very insightful, hearing your story. And so just to everyone out there who has been listening and following, and then you're like, wow, I didn't know that there was such an amazing opportunity for, for someone who studied an art course or a non-STEM course. Like Debbie is a living experience of that. And I feel like if I start asking Debbie about her experiences and the awards she has received while studying, we're going to probably have another episode for like an
That's
hour, but it's been it's been very fantastic. So I think the last question I have, Debbie, is like, what's your final advice to someone? Like, just think of yourself like a couple of years back before you had, this experience, right? Who maybe is studying the same course you're currently studying, or maybe another course, and they feel like, I don't think there's a lot of opportunities out there for me. How do I dream? Like, what are your final tips or final words to someone who is listening to our episode today?
Okay. What I would say is, like I said before, the mindset really matters. So first of all, you must know that you are not disadvantaged. The fact that you're doing arts or humanities or social sciences course should not put you at a disadvantage. But you must think beyond your immediate environment. You must think beyond being a Nigerian. You have to think and see yourself as a global citizen. Yes, I'm aware that there are some courses that in Nigeria they do not really, I don't know whether I would say weigh or they're not valued as much, but that's what I'm saying. You have to think beyond Nigeria. I feel like in more developed nations, any course, any field that is in the academia is valued. Any work that can provide solutions, whether it's in STEM or is not in STEM, is valued and is worthwhile, has worth, right? So horizon and have a vision, right? Those are the things that would push you beyond your zone of comfort, right? Have a vision, have something that is driving you so that you won't be complacent and you won't be pessimist, right? Because you need to just see it for you to actually reach it, right? So have a vision, trust God, seek opportunities, and don't waste time. Don't waste time. Don't say, oh, I want to wait till. It's okay to wait till, but even in your waiting period, make sure that every moment must count. That's something that I would have maybe done better. Even if you're serving, don't just let your service year just go like that, and you're just, especially if what you're now doing does not even relate to, I don't know, but just make sure that every month you're doing something. That's why that vision is very important. It's when you have a vision that you can make your present to be aligning with the vision, with the future that you see. But if you don't see a future, you won't know how to strategically live in the present. But if you have a goal, something that is driving you, you know that this present time, take for instance now, maybe you're in 200 level, 300 level, but you want to do your masters in UK, right? But and you know that the importance of having good grades. How good grades is makes you a better candidate for whatever you're doing. You won't be found being distracted or faffing about even when other people are, because you have a goal, you have a target. So it will determine how you spend your present, right? So have a vision, run with it. Don't waste time. Every moment counts. Make sure everything you are doing today is in line with where you want to be tomorrow, because it's bunch of today that leads to tomorrow, right? So yes. So
Wow.
just today is relating to tomorrow, and trust God. Be close to God. He knows the tomorrow. You are just trying to plan it, but God already knows it, right? So as you are planning, make sure God is at the center, and it will definitely help you through.
Wow, thank you so much, Debbie. This has been honestly awesome, very fantastic. What you said, like chips of today, the tomorrow you talked about your work currently and that today. So it's every like tiny bit of today is what eventually leads to that future that you desire. So thank you so much for joining us today once again, Debbie.
Yeah.
We hope that you got lots of valuable insights from our conversation. Deborah usually shares a lot of her experiences on LinkedIn. So feel free to, I'm going to ask her to let us know how to connect with her, because she does share inspired. I mean, at times I see her post and I'm very inspired by it. So I know I've not told you before, Debbie. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and then leave a review for us. We've always got exciting content coming your way, so stay tuned. And irrespective of where you are, if you're still at the searching process, you already have an interview coming up, don't forget what Deborah said. Your mindset is very, very important. So before I say thank you for listening, so Debbie, how can people connect with you? Do you have a LinkedIn? I know you have. So just let us know, how can we keep tabs with Debbie?
Thank you very much. Thank you. So my LinkedIn account is Deborah Ido, DEBORAH, plus my last name, IDOWU. So like she said, I share, content around what I do, my research journey and things like that. But if you want to meet the very, very goofy me, that's my Instagram. It's also Deborah Ido, but just different things I do there. Thank you.
I know you have a YouTube channel too, because you like vlogging.
Okay, there's also that, but I think I'm on break now.
Oh, okay, that's right. As you can tell, Debbie is a woman of many qualities. So thank you so much once again for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode. Have a wonderful day. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of ScholarChit Chats. If you found our conversation insightful and enjoyable, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to stay updated. We've got a lot more in store and we don't want you to miss out.
We are always diving into topics like this: academics, scholarship, professional life, and the international student experience. It's what makes ScholarChit Chats your go-to podcast for a fresh perspective. Also, don't keep all this wisdom to yourself. Share this episode with your friends and family who could benefit from it. We are building a community of learners and would love for you to be a part of it.
Your thoughts matter to us. We want to hear from you. Drop your comments and questions in the chat, or send your questions, suggestions, and comments to scholarchitchat@gmail.com. Your input helps shape the future of ScholarChit Chats.